Ciao ragazzi, this is Katie Portanova, and you're listening to Florence and Me. I'm a lover of stories and all things Italian, and I'm going to bring you all that in this podcast. My intention is to inspire you to step out of your comfort zone and explore life and travel the world. Join me as I tell you my story and many others about Italy and my love, Florence. Andiamo! Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode with Giulia from the northern part of Italy. Hello, Giulia.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Happy New Year, buon anno.
Buon anno,
How
auguri.
Auguri, yeah. How has it been? What's the weather temperature like?
Um,
Up there?
it's been warmer than usual.
Okay.
From what I've been told, most people, because in years past it used to be snowing this time of the year, and it's only snowed. It only snowed for 2 of the days, I think it was. Um, and other than that, it's just kind of been warm, above the 0
Yeah.
degrees Celsius, so that's pretty warm. Um, and it's been quite nice for walking around and getting to the shops because I get to the shops by foot. So it's nice that it's warmer, but in other ways, it's also not that great. Doesn't have that kind of mountain charm without the
Yeah.
snow, but lots of fog. Like almost every day, there's fog that comes in, and all the houses disappear. So that's
Oh,
quite nice.
that's cool. That's like mystical, like a ghost town kind of thing. Wow,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel like it's the same in Tuscany. My mother-in-law, we talk to her every weekend, and Ferdi said yesterday, she's like, it's unseasonably warm. It's like 50 degrees
Mm.
Fahrenheit for those you in the States. And she actually went to the seaside yesterday with some friends just to like be by the
Wow.
beach. And she sent me some beautiful pictures of like the ocean and the sun. And like, I'm like, wow. Like I don't think it's ever been like that. At least when I lived in Florence all those years ago, I don't remember January ever being pleasant in Florence. I remember it being
No.
incredibly cold. Um,
And wet. Very wet and cold.
Wet, yeah, a lot of rain and a lot of that humidity that goes into your bones. Me riding my bike with
Mm.
my 8 scarves um through Florence, and I would always lose my voice because of that ride to London school and back. Oh
Mm.
gosh, yeah, I do not miss those times of not having a voice. It was literally probably every month I would lose my voice. And then I started
Probably.
taking the bus and I said, screw it, I'm taking the bus. Yeah, here in Chicago, it's cold as all cold. Normal cold, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, some snow on the ground, but we haven't seen sun here in about 2 weeks, I think. I think it kind of peaked out yesterday, so our vitamin D shortage is really bad. So yeah, it's very depressing waking up. Well, I wake up at like 4 every day. And it's still dark out.
Mhm.
So it's hard not to see the sun. And it's I crave it, you know. I don't know about you,
Miss
but
it
I
a
know.
lot.
Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
in the mountains it's different. It's a different type of sun, but it's also needed. Like we need the sun.
It definitely is. Like I think up here one of the advantages is that it's so high up that sometimes we actually see the clouds on the towns down in the valley. So it
Oh,
looks like we're above the clouds. So we get a lot more sun than the rest of the valley does, which is nice. And that's definitely a saving grace because you need the sun, like you said. So
yeah.
do you take supplements for for
I
vitamin D?
I've started kind of, but I'm not good at routine. So I literally am I'm one of those people that yes, I have a routine for my day and everything. But when it comes to taking supplements, like I just kind of get off the routine quite easily. So I know I need it, and I know it probably would help my energy level as we go through the most boring months in the Midwest. Because January, February, and March in Chicago is the most depressing months of the year. I think probably all over the Midwest could be, because of the snow and the rain and the sleet, and then the random storms that come through, and then the fact that you can't go outside as much because it's so freaking cold. And nobody really wants to go outside except if you have a dog, you walk the dog. But yeah, I'm not a cold person, so I miss the warmth of Tuscany, even if some of the warmth is not as pleasant, because when it gets to 40 degrees Celsius, you want to move to the ocean and be in the ocean, because at least you'll get a breeze. Yeah,
That's true.
I don't know. So anyway, we're a little like slow today because it is a Sunday morning for me and a Sunday afternoon for Giulia. I woke up about an hour and a half ago, and I did not want to get up from my couch because my Millie was laying on me, and Sundays are her day to lay on me. She doesn't lay on me on any other day, and she cuddles up to me real nice. And those of you that don't know Millie is my calico cat. We got in 2018, and she is my baby. She's my first baby. So it was hard. I kept texting Giulia. I'm like, I'm about to get up. I'm about to get up. Let's do this episode. Oh, so yeah. All right. So today we're planning on doing this a few weeks ago, but the holidays got in the way. We talked about doing it the last week of the year, but then we're like, screw it. No, let's wait until we have more time. And I actually I'm now not working on Saturdays, so at least I get 2 days off in a row, which is fabulous, and I get to sleep into when I can see light outside of my shades instead of when I wake up and it's so dark. So it's actually quite pleasant getting that rest. So apologies for not getting this out to you sooner, but here we are. We're going to talk about four different regions of Italy, and their grape varieties having to do with the wine. Both of us are doing a different explanation of each one. Again, I've mentioned this, I think, on the last 2 episodes. I do have this little voicemail system. So if you have a question on anything that we're talking about, feel free to leave a message for us, and we can answer those questions about the grapes or the types of wine or any other tidbit that you're like, what the hell were they talking about? Since you're in the north, Giulia, why don't you start with one of your regions, either Piedmont or Veneto? Which one would you like to start with?
All right. I think let's start with Piemonte. So, just to put a little context in, I'm in Lombardy or Lombardia, and here there's not, like, wine's not really a thing. It's more of a cheese making kind of place. Very industrial. But Piemonte, it borders Lombardy, so it's in the northwestern region of Italy, or it is a northwestern region in Italy, and it borders France and a little bit of Switzerland. So there's kind of a bit of influence from that side when it comes to, cuisine, culture, and wine. So the grape that is most often used is the Nebbiolo. Oh, sorry, Nebbiolo. Always do that. So Nebbiolo is a grape that is harvested in late October. So it's an autumn or a fall grape. And so when it is harvested, it's generally when there's a lot of fog in the mountains. And that's why they think it's called Nebbiolo, because nebbia means fog. But the grape itself also has a little bit of this like powdery kind of look to it when it ripens. So it looks like it's got like fog inside. So it's an interesting thing. It's quite a small little grape and it's red grape. So they make red wine, but it's a light kind of wine. Um, and in my notes here, I do have it listed as having the denominazione di origine controllata e garantita status. What that means is that it's part of the grapes that are protected in Italy, and they have to be grown and produce a specific type of wine in a specific region. So it's, it's something that has been here for many, many years. And it's a big favorite in Piemonte, and they make different wines based on where it's grown in the region.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was kind of fascinating, whereas other regions they use a lot more varieties of grapes, whereas Piemonte they kind of have very few varieties and then change the grape's flavor depending on if it's closer to the coast or the mountainside.
Oh,
So that's something that's quite cool.
I,
Um, yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it's so, when you said the name Nebbiolo, I was like, oh, I wonder if it has to do, because you were just talking about the fog. I was like, oh, I wonder if it has to do with the fog. And you're like, yes, it has. So that one of the things I love about Italians is they say it as it is. So it's always like a literal
No.
translation. So I think that's great. And I did not know that. Even if I heard that grape name before, I did not know that it was having to do with the fact that there's fog, or it looks like there's fog around it or something. So that's interesting. What are the main, or at least a type of wine that comes from that? Will you just maybe you were just about to say it? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so there are two main wines that are made from the Nebbiolo grape. And the first one is let me just make sure I get it right. Um, the Barolo. So
Oh,
Barolo
yeah.
it's a very good wine. It's fermented for at least 36 months, and it's got a let's say more of a light red kind of coloration, and it's very rich in tannins. So it's a very heavy wine, and if you're not used to drinking wine, it's probably not the best one to start with.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's a heavy wine. You got to have a heavy meal with it. You're talking like rich risotto, heavy stews, lots of tomato, that kind of stuff. That's what you
Yeah.
really want to pair it with. And it's been kind of described as having aromas of tar and roses,
Oh,
which, not being a super wine person, I'm like, that sounds crazy.
yeah.
I don't know,
That sounds
aromas of
really
tar.
crazy. Yeah.
But it is a very good wine.
It is.
I haven't had it many times because it is very heavy and it's something that you'd take out at a dinner party. It's not your
Totally.
everyday kind of wine.
Yeah.
But what I did find fascinating is with the Barolo, when it's aged further, it kind of loses a lot of that redness and it becomes more of an orange color, like like a brick orange.
Mm.
And so it loses a bit of the tannins as well. So it becomes a bit more fruity flavored.
Mm.
And I think, that's quite hard to come by. It's a little more rare. So if you do find it's a bit of a gem. Give it a try. Um, and then the other one is the Barbaresco. So Barbaresco
Okay.
is also made from the Nebbiolo grape, but it's grown closer to the coastline, which means that it is harvested slightly sooner because it ripens sooner.
Mm.
And that one, being closer to the coast, it has this maritime influence. So it doesn't have as many it doesn't have as many tannins. So it's not as heavy in tannins and it's a little bit more fruity. And it's
Okay.
considered a good wine to start off with in terms of the heavy wine range. It's like on the lighter side of the heavier red wines. But in Piemonte, it's a little bit colder, and they get a lot more snow than other parts of North Italy. So their wines reflect the kind of food that they have available as well, which is, like meaty dishes,
Yeah.
or some fried stuff, like frutti di mare, misti, that kind of thing, where it's
Yeah.
fried fish and whatnot. And so their food, their wines reflect it. They don't seem to do too many on the white wine side, but those are the two main wines.
Okay.
But then there's also Roero, Gattinara, Carema, and Gemme, which are also made from the Nebbiolo grape. And
Okay.
those are much smaller vineyards that make them.
Uh-huh.
And again, also, high tannin kind of thing. So you will have a bit of staining on your lips or your teeth after drinking a few glasses of these wines.
Oh yeah.
Um, and as I said, they're really good for risottos, red meat dishes, and they that's kind of all there really is to say about it. There's
Yeah.
not a huge much to say about those wines. But what I found fascinating is that they do sweet wines as well. So
Okay.
there's a grape called Barbera, and then there's one Dolcetto.
Uh,
Barbera is a lot more of the uh, fruitier kind of flavor. So it's a nice fruity wine, very low in tannins, very light red kind of
okay.
coloration as well. And that's great for people who don't typically drink wine, and it's a good table wine. So it's
Okay.
an everyday wine.
That was
And
my
then
question.
Dolcetto,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was my
And
question.
then Dolcetto is the sweet wine.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's not fermented for very long, so it's harvested when it's still young as well, and it's got a light red to orange kind of color,
Okay.
and yeah, that's had with desserts and that sort of thing, because it is a sweet wine. I think you could think of it similar to a port in that kind of sense. And yeah, that's Piemonte. They're all about red wines and sweet wines and
Yeah.
very little white wine.
Yes. I think the question I was going to ask, and you answered it, is that last one you said was like the table wine that you could drink every day, which is the one, not the dolcetta. What was the other one?
Barbera.
Barbera.
So
Yeah.
yeah, all the wines that are made from Barbera grapes
Yeah.
are like fruity and chilled.
Yeah.
But I think that in the region itself, most people prefer the high tannin wines,
Mm-hmm.
and so they themselves do drink the Barbaresco and
Mm-hmm.
Barolo on an everyday
Yeah.
basis. Um,
Exactly. So then,
but yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it's quite different to the rest of Italy.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of Italy, it's definitely more of a fruity wine kind of thing, whereas up in the north, they seem to like their
Mm-hmm.
hardcore wines.
Yeah, and I guess if you think about it up there where you are, it's like a lot more mountains, a lot more, it's a little bit colder. There's a lot of skiing. There's a lot of like outdoor cold activities that not a warm, you don't warm it up, but like a hefty, hearty wine, like a Barolo or a Barbaresco. What did you say?
Yeah, Barbaresco, exactly.
Barbaresco. Those types of wines kind of fill up your belly as well as, with the food that you eat. And that goes back to what we said at one of the other episodes, like most of these wines, you want to eat something with it, right? With those
Definitely.
heartier, heavy in tannin wines, because you don't want to drink it with an empty stomach because that's not really good. So yeah.
No, I would not recommend wine on an empty stomach.
No, no, not at all. Well, that's cool. Like, I didn't know. I mean, when you said Barolo, I remember Barolo because Barolo is a quite famous type of wine,
Mm,
that you can find all over the states and different places, but like specific to that region, you probably, it would be best to go there to actually learn about how they make it and stuff. Because you go to any place, they talk about Barolo. Everyone knows Barolo, at least in the States, is a quite expensive wine. Could be, depending on the type, I guess. Right? Or is it
yeah,
always expensive? Okay. Um,
I think it's. I'm not sure it's like I wouldn't say it's a super expensive wine.
yeah.
but it's not, it's not Tavanello or like
Yeah.
going to the Vino Scusi or something like that. You are going to pay a little bit extra for it, but it
Mhm.
seems that in Piemonte they do drink it on a regular basis, almost every day.
Okay.
So I guess it depends where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. Do you want to go into Veneto or should we hop down to one of the other ones? What do you think?
I think let's hop down to, why not Umbria,
Oh, let's go to
and then we
Umbria.
can
Yeah.
finish off on Tuscany. Yeah. Tell us about Umbria.
So Umbria is a quite interesting region because there's really only, at least the ones that I found, only about three types of grapes that they use and kind of share a little bit with Tuscany. So the
Mm.
Sangratino is the one that I know very well because there's a wine called Montefalco Sangratino, DOCG, which you were just talking about, the DOCG
Mm.
affiliation or the stamp of approval, if you will. That is the most famous grape for Umbria. The clay soils of Falco are dusted with salmon limestone, so this is a really great way for this grape to come through with this type of terrain. And it blends with other types of wine, but mostly with other types of grapes rather, but mostly with the Montefalco DOCG region, which is, if you've ever been to Perugia, it's a big wine there. Now, what I'll say about Perugia, and no offense to the Perugians, Perugia is a very different region. Julia, have you ever visited Perugia?
I have not visited Perugia specifically, but I've been to Umbria.
Umbria, yeah. So even I'm not. This is not just my opinion, but it's also my mother-in-law because she went there recently with some friends and felt it was an interesting encounter. So again, Perugia is a beautiful town. I've been there a few times. I had a friend that lived there years ago, and I visited and I stayed there. They are not any way similar to Tuscans in the respect of they're not very warm. They're nice people, but they're not very warm. So I found that like a kind of not like the same as their wine, but like it's hard to converse with someone from Perugia. And my mother-in-law, when she went there with friends, even talking to the wait staff, usually in Tuscany, people the waiters like talk to you and they want to know where you're from and they want to like know things. Perugia is not really like that. So it's a beautiful town to look from because Perugia is kind of like on a little hill.
Mm.
But I just remember being kind of shunned and like kind of cut off from the Perugians. And it was not a very welcoming experience for me. So as I was reading about their grapes, nothing bad about their wine's amazing, but it just goes to show that the three grapes or four grapes, because one of them is shared with Tuscany, there's only three. So I wonder, like, oh, well, why is there only three grapes? Well, because I don't know. I'm just like making a conversational piece of the fact that maybe it's because they're closed off and stuff. And I'm not saying they're closed like, for example, where Julia lives, because Julia was telling me a few times, like when she first moved there, right? The people were kind of like, who are you? What are you doing here? Like kind of thing,
I
because they're
think
not used to new
I
people.
think exactly. I would describe it as being very confused, like why would you
Mhm.
move here from a
Yeah.
sunny place? Like why would you move here?
Yeah.
It's not rude by any means.
Yeah.
And the longer we stay here, the more they warm up to us, they become a bit more greetings
Yeah.
and ask questions and all of that stuff and start to recognize us. But in the beginning it was very much this confused, why are you here? That makes no sense. So would you say that in Perugia it's the same, that people are just confused as to why you're visiting, or
I
they just
yeah,
a
I
bit
don't
more standoffish?
I don't know. What I my From what I remember now, this was 2007, so this is a long time ago. when I was there for like, I don't know how many weeks I was there, I was visiting with a friend. I just felt like they didn't want me there. Like they just didn't,
Mm.
they couldn't connect with me. Perhaps at that time my Italian wasn't the best. It probably wasn't. Like they never went to English like in Tuscany, like in Florence. Like, you know, they would switch it directly to English to make you feel welcome, to like, oh, okay, I got you. Yes, I'll get you that. It was more just like, yeah, why are you here and why are you trying to talk to me? That's how I felt. And my mother-in-law felt the same way. And she's from the north, she's from Trentino, and then living in
Mm.
Tuscany, being welcomed by Tuscans and knowing like the coldness that it is sometimes in Trentino. Like she knows the two different types of personalities, that she was just like, why, like I'm trying to ask a question about like vegetarian, because she's a vegetarian, you know, long story. But anyway, so she felt that the same way as I did. She was like, well, they don't even want to answer my question. They don't even look me in the eye. They don't. And that's how I felt. Like they've never really looked me in the eye. So if you're not from that area, but I don't know if this is just Perugia, because Perugia is the main city in Umbria. Other cities around Umbria could be completely different. And no offense again to any city that's, which I doubt they're listening to this, but still like any city in Umbria. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I digress. So I was just kind of going back and forth with that thought in my head. The other grape that is in Umbria is a main part of the Orvieto wine, which Orvieto, everybody knows that town. Well, not everybody, but Orvieto, I have never been, but I know it's beautiful. I need to go there. You can get there by train, and it's on a hill as well. The grape is called Grechetto, and it's mainly in Umbria, with a pleasant nuttiness and leafiness. I don't know what that would consist of. Nutty, I'm guessing just like any type of nut kind of taste. It can be blended with Trebbiano,
Okay.
which is the other grape that's the same as Tuscany. I'll wait and talk about that one with Tuscany. It can be blended, uses a blending grape in Torgiano wine and Cervero white wines. So this is a white grape.
Okay.
It can be semi-sweet. Yeah, it's like a semi-sweet wine. So Orvieto wine, any type of Orvieto wine, I remember as very sweet. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I
From what I
never been
remember.
a super fan because I'm not a fan of very sweet wines or even slightly sweet wine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do remember on occasion when someone else brought the wine, it was a bit on the sweeter side.
Yeah.
I think if you're not a massive wine drinker, it's probably a good wine to have
I
because
think so too. Yeah.
it doesn't give you that like, oh, I'm wine.
No,
Doesn't give you that
it's
kind of
not a
flavor.
strong taste, I felt. Like it's
Yeah.
not a strong taste. It's more of a wine that I think you could drink as a table wine. It's not like a heavy, hearty wine, especially it's a white wine. It's probably a great wine with fish for sure. Um yeah. So that's the white grape. And the other white grape is the Trebbiano, which I'll talk about with the Tuscany region.
Mhm.
And the other red grape is also another one in Tuscany, but I'll talk about it here. I have to say it right. Ciligiolo. Ciligiolo. So no. Help me with the main roots of the word.
Ciligiolo.
Ciligiolo is the reason why it's called that because it looks somewhat like a cherry as
Yeah.
as the grape. And ciliegie is cherry in Italian,
Yeah.
right?
So it's
Okay.
basically the name basically means
The shape.
cherry look-alike.
Yeah, basically. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. So this red grape has Spanish origins in the
Mm.
DNA of the grape, but now it's grown mainly in Tuscany and Umbria and a little bit in Sicily, it says as well.
Oh.
Um
Huh.
There is a definite relation between Ciligiolo and Sangiovese, which is why I say that, because one of the wines in Monteferralle, I believe that's the one, because I've been talking a lot about that wine when I do wine tastings. That grape is in a lot of their wines because they do mostly red. And Monteferralle is the one vineyard I talk about in Chianti. Let's see. Opinion seems to be that the modern Ciligiolo comes from Maremma, the region of Tuscany. Maremma is on the coast. And now Maremma, I feel like, is a lot like a not a what it's like a underdog of regions in Tuscany or near in around Tuscany, because Maremma is its own region, but Maremma is part of Tuscany. Maremma's on the seaside, but Maremma is very a rocky terrain. There's not much touristy type activities there. I mean, there are and there aren't. But because it's so far away from Florence, I feel like a lot of people miss out on Maremma. Because Maremma is where like Argentario is, which I love Argentario, which when I was first dating Stefano, that was like the first, when he asked me, he's like, where do you want to go this weekend? When he wanted to take me to the seaside, I'm like, Argentario. He's like, that's like 3 hours from here. We're going for the day. So he never took me there. But I had gone there before I met Stefano with some friends, and I just loved it. It's a beautiful town. And it's like, if you can't get to Amalfi in the summertime, go to Argentario. It's like it's a lost gem, like a hidden gem, because it can be very luxury, but it can also be very you can find campgrounds nearby. So it's kind of really cool. There's like two different sides of it. And here comes my kitty. So yeah, so that is Umbria. Thank you, Maya.
That's actually very, very fascinating. Because fun fact, has nothing to do with wine.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in some ways it does. But there's a livestock guardian dog that's called the Maremma.
Ah, yes.
And it was created here in Italy, in Maremma, and is considered one of the best livestock guardian dogs, because they're very big, they can scare away bears, and they love the cold. Like love, love, love the cold. So that's actually pretty fascinating.
I love that you brought this up, because we were just at my friend's Mike's farm yesterday picking up our meat, because he has livestock, and he does it in a very sustainable way. He's trying to give back to the earth and give back to the animals, and his meat is amazing. So anybody that is near me in outside of Chicago, you have to go to his meat, get his meat at his farm or at the farmer's market that he's starting up again. Anyway, he does have those dogs that watches the goats and the sheep and the pigs and the chickens and all of that. And they're like, yes, they're enormous. They're so tall. And Stefano was saying that name yesterday. That's why I'm like, oh my God, you're like in sync with us. Like, I was going to show you a picture of one, because they're so, and like Stefano works with Mike at this farm and helps like cut down brush and stuff just to help. Because we just love him and his family, Mike and his wife, Colleen, and he has 4 kids. But this has been his dream to like create this farm, and his in-laws have a farm down the road that they take care of horses. So they have horses. Oh, wow. So Mike has cows, pigs, 44 piglets he has right now that they just gave birth like a couple months ago. And they have pigs, they have goats, they have sheep, and I think that's it. Yeah, and chickens that lay eggs, and then he's going to try again to have chickens to harvest, obviously, to have the meat and everything, but that takes a lot of time, and they can't survive the cold here, so he has to wait till the growing season is spring. Anyway, that's so funny that you brought that up. Anyway, we digressed once again, guys. But yeah, but it has to do with Italy, so it's totally fine. Okay, let's go back up to Veneto. What did you find in Veneto?
Okay, so Veneto, when I was doing my research, I was very surprised. So Veneto is in the northeastern area of Italy. It's northeastern region, and the capital city is Venice. So, lots of love and gondolas and water.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but what's interesting about the region is that it's quite similar to Piemonte in the sense that there's a part that has coastline, but it's a different sea, it's the Adriatic, and part of it that is mostly just mountainous, and it's bordered with Austria and Switzerland, and then across the water is Croatia. So it's got a lot of influences from all around.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Luna. And so what I was fascinated to find out is that there's mostly white wines from that area.
Oh,
And something that I didn't know, and that's where Prosecco is from. So I
I
had no
did not know
idea.
that. I did not know
Yeah,
that. Yes.
I thought that was very fascinating. So Prosecco, for those of you who don't know, it's a type of sparkling wine, white wine, that people typically have as an aperitivo, aperitif, before you have dinner or lunch. And it's very dry. It's like, will give you dry mouth. It
Mm.
is so dry. And it's made from the Glera grape, which is obviously
Uh-huh.
a white grape to make the white wine, and it's a big favorite amongst the Venetians. So that's actually quite fascinating because pretty much everyone drinks prosecco at one point or the other.
Sure.
Um,
Is it
but yeah,
is that the region where the Aperol Spritz was created? Is that Venice then because of the Prosecco? Oh no.
I think so.
I think so too, but I'm
Um,
not sure. I don't know.
we'll have to confirm that.
Yeah. Aperol Spritz is very good in the summer. Anyway, moving on. Go ahead.
Okay, so there are quite a few grapes that are used. There's the Glera that we spoke about for Prosecco. Then there's the Garganega
Oh.
and the Corvina Veronese. So
Mm,
those are the three main ones that are used.
okay.
And um, the Garganega, which is a very interesting name, is the highest yielding grape in the region. So most of the wines use this grape for something or other, or it's just the main ingredient in many of the wines. And the most famous wine that it's used for is the Soave,
Oh,
which is a white wine, and I would say it's quite delicate, and it's really good for, like creamy pastas, light risotto, fish, that kind of thing. Um, and then also from the same grape is the gam gambelada,
oh,
which that one I have never heard of
I've
before.
never
I'd
heard of
be
any of
intrigued.
these. Yeah.
I, right? I think I'd be intrigued to find out. But again, it's white wine. I typically myself don't drink white wine normally.
Yeah.
But these two are apparently some of the best. They're very
Okay.
tasty and they're really loved in the region from this Garganega grape. Okay, so what do I have here? Okay, so the Garganega grape has to be fermented for 8 months, which I think for a white grape, that's actually quite long.
Yeah.
Um, and so it gives it brings out the sweetness apparently in the wine
Okay.
or in the grapes a lot more than what other white wines that are typically quite dry.
Uh-huh.
Should be something nice to try. So if you're ever in Venice, look for those two wines, the Soave and Gambellata. Very
Is one of
strange names.
is one of them, or are those because they're sweeter wines? Are they used? Can you eat them or drink them with fish because you're more on the seaside with Venice and stuff? Are those one of those more popular with fish, or what do you
They're
think?
both
Good with
they
fish?
both seem to be equally popular with fish,
Okay.
especially because they're described as having a citrusy almond aroma.
Mm, okay.
So I think especially with, like a full fish grilled, with like a side salad or something, you'll
Yeah.
probably do very well with one of these wines. Very light, nice for a
Okay.
lunch at, the seaside kind of wine.
Yeah.
It,
Sounds divine. We
it
should go
seems to
there now.
be, yeah, I know. I want to go try it as well. I'm like, what is
Yes.
this? And try it more. And also people seem to use it a lot with vegetarian dishes. So it is a favorite
Oh,
amongst vegetarians.
okay.
That might be nice for your mother-in-law to know. She can give it a try and let
Yeah.
us know.
Yeah. I forget if she even likes white wine because she usually drinks red. But yeah, I should tell her. She probably knows. But yeah.
Most people I know drink red wine. I
Yeah.
know very few people that actually drink white wine on a regular basis,
Yeah.
but I mean, they must be out there because they're producing the wines.
So what's
So,
funny about that is so Stefano just sent me a video because he was watching this video about this one doctor was talking about what's healthy, like what you should be eating and what you should be, consuming for a healthy body, blah blah blah. Anyway, so he sends this to me and he just has a smiley face. And it says the thing you shouldn't be eating is grapes because of the high sugar. Okay, listen. Okay, this is just funny. What you should be drinking is red wine because when it's fermented and stuff, the sugar is not as potent or as like strong as the grape. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Because yes, I drink enough red wine to really help my heart, as much as I can. So it's funny. And then the other thing, since we were talking about cheese, I wanted to interrupt you that last time, but I didn't because you were talking about how your region is like cheese, like they make a lot of cheese. So another thing I read, there was an article in the Washington Post that said, after all these years of saying cheese is bad for you, it raises your cholesterol and all this stuff, cheese doesn't actually do that. So now cheese is healthy for you. Well, I've always thought that, so that's fine with me.
I
So
mean,
anyway,
everything in moderation, right?
everything in moderation. Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
look, people in Italy just, well, I'll come back to Veneto now, but
Yeah.
uh, my husband and I, we've been watching a few videos, and every now and then he finds history videos about Italy, and we learn a little bit more, and it's really fascinating, and learning more about this region and how old it is. And to think that people have been living here for thousands of years, and for most of that time, they've been making some sort of wine or cheese, and that's kind of what they live off of: wine, cheese, and polenta. That seems to be the
Yeah.
staple up here.
Uh,
And most of these people are not overweight. They live until like they're 120. So there's something to be said for cheese
yeah.
and wine diet.
Well, that and also has to do with I just saw today too an article about the Mediterranean diet is the diet you should be on. But the
There
thing
you
is, what
go.
I feel is like, especially here in America, in the States, people don't understand that like the type of pasta or the type of sauce or whatever you have, it doesn't have to be eccentric. It doesn't have to be like you don't have to put so much shit in your pasta, or you don't have to put so much stuff on your piece of meat. You don't have to put so much stuff when you cook your fish. You don't have to put all the sauces and the rubs and all this stuff. I think it's like misunderstood. We should talk about the Mediterranean diet next. I feel like that should
I
be.
think that's
I
a
I
good
think
follow-up.
I think we'll follow up with that because I believe wholeheartedly, and I tell this to my clients daily. I eat pasta almost every day, like a nice, not a big bowl of pasta, but like 80 grams of pasta, which is what it should be.
It's a normal amount,
A
yeah.
normal amount of pasta a day. And I don't feel like I'm enormous. So, I mean, there's just different thoughts on that. Anyway, sorry, let's go back to Veneto and then we will definitely probably be going into the Mediterranean diet the next episode.
Yes. Um, okay, cool. So Veneto, we spoke about those wines, and then we've got the Corvina Veronese, and another grape is the Rondinella, which they're both red grapes, so for red wine,
Uh-huh.
and they're both used for the basis of three famous wines from the area. The
Okay.
one is the Amarone, the other is the Valpolicella,
Oh yes, Valpolicella. Oh my gosh, that's our favorite wine. Go ahead. Sorry. Yes,
and the last one is the Bartolino.
Bartolino. Okay, I don't know that one.
So the Valpolicella, is considered one of the nicest wines to have, especially as a table wine.
Mm.
And it's said to have a velvety feel on the tongue when you drink it.
Yes, yes, yes.
Um, so it's nice and smooth. It's like this intense ruby red color, and it fills you with all of the joys that wine should.
Mm.
So it's not high in tannins, it's not a very strong flavor, but it's still a good, rich kind of wine to have. And I would definitely suggest it to to anyone who's having a dinner party or something and you want to impress some guests. I
Hmm.
think it's a really great, not too expensive way to, to kind of go all out on your dinner party.
Yeah.
Um, then the Bardolino. Now, Bardolino is one of the wines that I like a lot, and we find it here quite easily in the shops, and we've had it quite a few times for our table wine,
Mm.
our everyday wine. Works really well. It's also got a nice a nice red color to it. I wouldn't say that there's anything amazing about the coloration of the wine, but it's very light, it's very fruity, it's very easy to drink. Sorry about that, interrupted by cat. Um, so yeah, the Bardolino is definitely one that I absolutely love,
Okay.
and I would suggest it to anyone to try, and you can find it in most of Italy as well, and I'm sure you can find it outside of Italy. So the Corvina Veronese and the Rondinella, those are the two grapes that are used in these wines
Okay.
as the basis.
Uh,
But then those grapes are also used to make another wine called the Amarone.
um,
Now, Amarone I have never tasted, but I've heard about, and it's more of a dry red, and it's got a very, very dark sort of red color, and it's considered to be an expensive wine. So it's not your everyday table wine. It's something you buy when you have guests over or if you just want to treat yourself. So even in Italy, it's considered an expensive wine, and it's mostly to do with the processing as well, because it's air dried grapes first, and
okay.
then with the air dried grapes, they make the wine. I'm not entirely sure how that process functions itself, but that has to do with why it costs so much, because it's quite a
Consuming.
uh time consuming sort of thing to do.
Okay.
And again, that one is ideal for your rich risotto, polenta dishes, red meat stews,
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. And then that wine also comes in a sweeter version called the recioto,
Oh.
which I guess for people who don't like that dry wine kind of flavor, this would be, it would be a better option, but it's also considered an expensive wine. So it's not your everyday kind of wines.
Mhm.
And I would say the Bardolino or the Val,
Policella.
thank you, Valpolicella. I was like, what?
That wine. Yes.
Those two are more of your table wines from that region. They're red, and they're just absolutely lovely. And then we spoke about the prosecco from the glera grape already. So yeah, there's a lot going on in Veneto in terms of wines, in terms of grapes, and I learned a lot about that area. I
Yeah.
didn't know that white wine was the predominant wine,
I didn't know that
and I didn't know that they made this sweeter version of the Amarone. Maybe one day I'll be fortunate enough to try both of them,
yeah.
but for now they remain a bit distant, because a bit distant because they are a little pricey.
Yeah.
But if you can and you have the opportunity, go for it, try it out. There's not that many bottles made every year,
Uh,
so
is the I was curious when you were talking Amarone, ma is Amarone related to the Amaretto, like the digestive after dinner drink?
I don't know. It might just be similar names, because
Is it
amara
similar name?
means
Yeah.
bitter, so it might be just a
Yeah.
derivative. I don't actually know if I don't know where amaretto is from.
I don't know either, but I was wondering just because there's so many different things with Amarone, there's like the whole like almond type name to a lot of alcoholic drinks in Italy. There's the those cookies that are like of almond amaretti. I think those are the like
Yeah,
those little like circle cookies, I think. Or
they have
cookies. They're like,
marzipan in the middle.
oh yeah, that's yeah, I don't like those. Anyway,
I
but
don't either.
there was yeah, I don't know, I was curious because then I'm thinking back to my my young years in Florence when I would stay out until all hours of the night. And we would get amaretto like at the pubs and stuff, or we get Montenegro, which again, Montenegro I don't think is Italian, um but we would get these like extra shots at the end of the night. And I don't know. I was curious, but it's okay. Yeah. Because Amarone, I didn't even know that existed. I did hear of Appolicella just because Stefano, that's like the only wine he'll drink. I mean, he likes Chianti, but not the best. He doesn't like it dry.
No,
But yeah.
I do.
That's cool.
So here's a fascinating fact on amaretto. We just had a fact checker look it up for us.
Yeah.
So amaretto is from Saronno, and Saronno is a comune or municipality in Lombardy in the province of Varese. So it's actually very close to where I am right now. And it's made from apricot kernels, bitter almonds, peach stones.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know what a peach stone is. What is that?
It's the like
the pit?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, what is that? Okay. All right. Well,
okay, that's very
we learned something new. Thank you. That's awesome. Shall we go to Tuscany then? The most
let's let's go to Tuscany.
Famous, which we're both very familiar with, so we can test each other's knowledge, and you can bring up things that I probably didn't research completely. So so the main growing areas of Tuscany for wine is the Chianti, which is the oldest in Italy, which we talked about earlier. Montalcino, where Brunello is from, Montalcino, Montepulciano, and then the Tuscan coast, which is Maremma. Those are the main areas. So no secret here, Sangiovese is the most famous grape in Tuscany. And that's why I love it so much, because Sangiovese is my favorite. Whenever anybody asks me, like, it's my favorite. If anyone asks me, like, what kind of wine do I like? If it says Sangiovese, get it. I don't care. I love it. So this is the most widely planted grape in Tuscany. The main variety and the classic red wines of Chianti, Vino Nobile, Montepulciano, Brunello di Montalcino. It's the main one. 61% of the vines in Tuscany are Sangiovese. This was in 2014. Yeah. These varieties are the best in hilly terrains. So that's why it's beautiful for Tuscany, because if you've been to Chianti, if you've been to San Gimignano, if you've been any place, they are perfectly in the right spot because it's enough hills.
That's true.
You just see hills and hills and hills of vines. It results as a medium to full-bodied wine, which is why I love it, because it's full-bodied. And it has lively acidity and firm tannins. So it's not, I wouldn't say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I wouldn't say a Sangiovese wine is that high in tannins, depending on probably if it's a Riserva or not, but I don't feel it's that high in tannins.
No,
I don't think so.
Not really.
No.
I think it's actually quite. No, not at all. It's quite light, and you can drink quite a few glasses without.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Dyeing your mouth red.
Yeah, exactly. Sangiovese wines have an earthy character and is a distinctive sour to black cherry flavors. Again, depending on how they ferment it. This is just a general interpretation. Yeah, the best expressions of a sangiovese wine: robust, age-worthy, herbal, spicy, toasty, smoky. Yeah, smoky definitely. So yeah, sangiovese is, that's why I love Chiantis, because I have just a love for a Chianti. A Brunello, yes, but a Brunello is like your Barolo or Amarone. I'm guessing these will be similar. You want to have a nice good meal with that, because a Brunello is quite expensive. If you've been to any liquor stores in the States, a Brunello you'd find for like over $100. Like, it's very, very expensive. So
Yeah,
you
it's
might
expensive.
as well bring it to a very nice dinner, not just for you drinking on the couch watching Netflix.
Yeah, no, that's not a Netflix and chill kind of wine.
No, it's not. No, it's not at all. You want to eat something with it for sure. And I want to stress also, you want to you want to eat food with a lot of wines. It's not necessarily saying that you have to just have um you can just drink the wine. And I think you said this earlier, you should never drink any of these types of wines on an empty stomach. You should have something with you, eating a snack or peanuts or crackers or something, just to have that coating of your stomach, because it's not, you don't want to, yeah, you don't want to deal with that. So the second wine we'll talk about with Tuscany is the Trebbiano. Trebbiano is a white grape. It's used commonly as a component to Sangiovese wines. Can be part of the base. Its staple is in the white blends. It's in Vinsanto, which is the dessert wine, which we've talked about before. And in 2014, this is just some statistics, Trebbiano accounted for 5.9% of of Tuscany's vines.
Okay.
So Trebbiano can be found in red and white, to take from that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's all. Yes. So it's like a blending grape, what they call it, as a blending. So they like to blend it with different types. The other white grape, which is can be made in San Gimignano, which I think I might have talked about before, is Vernaccia. Now, Vernaccia, I never really liked this wine when I was living in Italy. There was something about it I just didn't like. It was like I don't want to say sour. It was just really, I don't know all the right wine words, like a sommelier would say, but it just didn't sit well in my palate. And so whenever I saw Vernaccia di San Gimignano, I'm like, ugh, no, can't drink it. This
I
wine,
think sour is a
yeah.
good explanation though.
Is it okay? Do you agree then? Have
It
you
is
had a Vernaccia before? I'm sure.
it's kind of like eating a fresh grape that isn't quite sweet yet. It's a bit like
Yes. And it's like it's just very interesting. And I'll tell you a story about Vernaccia. Now I like it, but it's a specific vineyard now I like it from. So
maybe that's the trick.
it has to be. You can't just buy it off the street, like, you just can't. This wine first received the Italian DOC designation in 1966, which is the DOC
Wow.
is how do I say it? Denominazione, yeah, di origine controllata. And this status, is that right?
Yeah.
This status was established in 1963 as it indicates a superior quality of wine. So, and then it ascended to DOCG, which is the one you talked about for Piedmonte, which is above DOC, is adding to the origine controllata e garantita. And this is, it must pass an in-depth laboratory analysis, panel testing to guarantee their merit. This domination identifies the highest quality wines. Yes. So they've been designating these or granting these the status since 1980, and there are 11 DOCGs in Tuscany. And Vernaccia tends to be crisp and floral with refreshing minerality. And I don't know if I would say that to all of the Vernaccia, but this is what the general consensus is. And so Vernaccia contains, it's 1.2% of the vineyards planted in Tuscany. This again is in 2014 from this article I got. So I'll tell you the story. So Vernaccia, okay, this is a little story. It's probably gonna go a little long because I always go long. Casaluci is the vineyard that I love in San Gimignano that I met through knowing, I got to know this wine. It's called Puras at a tiny pizzeria in Gambassi Terme near my mother-in-law. So she used to go to this pizzeria with my father-in-law all the time. And this is the wine she always got. So this is now almost a year now that he's passed. She took us to this pizzeria the day before we left. And I fell in love with this wine. I'm like, oh my God, Ferdi, where is this wine? She's like, I don't know, ask the waiter. So I asked the waitress and I said, where do you get this wine? And she's like, well, there's a vineyard. You can go visit it. It's in San Gimignano. I'm like, holy shit. So I made it an obligation last year, 2022, to go visit this freaking vineyard. And I did in June of 22, this past June.
Yeah.
And Stefano and I spent 4.5 hours there tasting all their wines. And they specialize in Vernaccia. This is why I'm leaning toward, I had a point. I had a point to my story. I had a point. So they have 2 types of Vernaccia. And I would love for you guys, whenever you guys come down to Tuscany and whenever the time's right, you have to come with me and taste these 2 types of Vernaccia. They make a Vernaccia, it's called Casaluci Vernaccia, and that's their basic Vernaccia. So good, so amazingly good. Okay, and again, like I said, it can only be made in San Gimignano. The second wine, which I have saved because it's so freaking good, it's called Mare Terra, and it's the Vernaccia Riserva. Now, I've never heard of it. A Riserva, a white wine Riserva, Vernaccia. I've never. So Mare Terra, mare meaning sea, terra meaning earth. You can eat it both with meat and fish. And it tastes so good. And it's so heavy and like beautiful. And like and so when we went back in September, and now I'm like best friends with the winemaker Lorenzo and his wife Renata and everybody that works there. Cause I'm like, I love you guys. Oh my God. So Vernaccia can be amazing if it's from the right vineyard, is my point.
I feel like that's true for a lot of wines though. They'll call it something, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's not the recognized actual wine, and it's got quite a different flavor to vineyards that do things traditionally.
Yes. And I feel that
that's cool.
That's true in Chianti, and I think we might have touched on this a few episodes back, but like only specific wines can be called Chianti Classico. And then there's a thing called Chianti Rufina. And then that's like that vineyard is called Rufina, whatever. That's a big brand in outside of Florence, but it's not the same thing. So like people don't understand that like just because it says Chianti, a Chianti Classico is a higher level than just a Chianti. And there's so many Chiantis that you can find in Tuscany and in all of Italy and all over the world, but they're 2 different processes and then 2 different statuses or qualifications to become a Chianti Classico. So
yeah, it's quite a thing, like there's so much to it, and you'll find this throughout Europe, really. You'll find that certain grapes, certain wines have these designations, foods, tomato sauces, like there's all sorts of things that have these the status of the DOCG or just DOC. And unfortunately, it's like with the French cheese Camembert.
Yeah.
I mean, to be an actual Camembert, it has to come from the Camembert region. But you can find that anywhere, made by anybody. It just doesn't have the qualification, so it doesn't really taste like the original.
Sure.
And it's so nice to hear you go on a journey of trying a wine that's like, ew, gross, it's kind of sour, to this is amazing. Why didn't I try this the first time? And
Yeah.
everyone needs to know about it.
Yeah. And that's why it's
That's
like,
fantastic.
it's amazing thing. Once you like, I've always said to everyone that I've had these tastings with, you, as much as like, if you are a wine lover and you love wine, if you go to California and you go to these like wine tastings, XYZ, you go, and I've heard they go to 4 different vineyards in one day. Okay. I don't know how you can get like a really good understanding of the wine if you're going to 4 different ones in one day. Because in Italy, like, I feel like you go to a vineyard, if you're, interested in wine and you want to learn about the wine, you want to spend time with the people that make the wine and you want to learn about the wine. And maybe you want to share the wine. So then you want to purchase the wine and you want to bring it back to wherever you're from. And like, so those types of people I want to meet. Like, you come see me, you come to on my retreats, you come and visit me or whatever when I'm when I'm back in Tuscany. And I'll take you to the most amazing vineyards with the most amazing stories, with the most amazing wines that not maybe everyone likes, but you get to hear the stories of people and you get to hear the story of how they made it and understand the quality with the price is not always the same. The quality is different in different regions, obviously, but also the idea of getting to know where these things come from and where they stem from and where they came from their great grandfather or the Etruscans or the Romans or it's just a really amazing journey to go on to understand why are we so obsessed with wine.
Why indeed. And what I particularly like about it is I've gone to a few wine tastings in South Africa, and it's very clinical. You come in, you got your little wines, you try each of the wines, you do the spit thing. You're like, yeah, okay, it's nice, whatever. By the fourth wine, you're like, I don't know what I'm tasting anymore.
Yeah.
But the idea of going somewhere and learning the history of it, I think is something that Italians do very well. We spoke about that as well when they want to welcome you into the culture, and by asking you to have a glass of wine with them, it's not about getting you drunk, it's about inviting you into their culture, because everybody's got a connection to a different type of wine, to a different flavor, whether you yourself have the vineyard or you used to go to the pizzeria with your husband and this is the wine that you guys always had. Everybody's got a story like that. That this is it is so intensely ingrained in the culture. And I think that's perhaps the story of wine for a lot of people. Wine is a weird, complicated thing that some people can taste all the aromas in, all the flavors.
Yeah.
And then the other people that just really enjoy drinking it, but they can't tell the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it's very much ingrained in human history as well. Been doing it for thousands of years. The first time someone put grapes underground and they were like, wait a minute, this isn't vinegar. It actually tastes pretty good.
Yeah.
We've just set off, and
Yeah.
it's become a part of us in so many ways. And coming here and learning about that history, going to the vineyard, finding out about their great grandfather that planted this whatever grape, it's incredible.
There's
incredible.
There's always there's another story that I always think about when I first tasted clams. And this was on the seaside. This was 2005. I'll never forget this day. I went with a bunch of guys that I had met that summer. They're all from Florence. And they took me to this restaurant on the seaside. And I never tasted clams before, pasta with clams, pasta alla vongole. And they're like, oh my God, Katie, you have to taste it. You have to. I'm like, And at that time in my life, I was in my mid-20s. I'm like, sure, I'll taste it. Like, why not? You know? And he paired it with this wine, which I never forgot. It's a big it's you can find in the States. Actually, you can't find this one in the States, but you can find the brand. And it's a Sicilian wine. It's white. It's called La Ghia.
Yeah.
And the wine is the vineyard is called Donna Fugata, meaning the woman escaped. Um, and it is I will always think of that lunch because it was a beautiful lunch on the seaside in the middle of summer. And it was the first time I tried clams. And like, I will never, ever forget that wine. As much as I probably had much better wine since then, but I always search for it. And in Chicago, that we have Italy, and as they do in Florence, which unfortunately I don't know why, Italy is a big, shopping center with all things from Italy. And I remember searching for La Ghia there when my sister lived nearby in the city, and I couldn't find it. I found Donna Fugata, but I found a different white wine. It's called like Antilla or something, and I could never find it. I've never found it since. And it's spelled Lighea, La Ghia. And I would love to go visit that vineyard in Sicily someday just because of that memory. I'm sure it's like a big operation like Antoniori, who knows? But I don't know. It's just something, it's a memory that I think that I'll always, always remember, especially because I love clams and I love mussels and I love every fish in the world.
You love food.
I love food and pasta and cheese and wine, everything. But yeah,
Donna
stories mean
Fugata.
stories mean a lot with wine. What's she doing there?
I'm just looking it up.
I don't even know if they still make it, to be honest.
Yeah, because
See,
interesting. It's also the Antilla that comes up. I wonder if they
I wonder if they changed the name, but like I would be so sad because Antilla does not taste like Legia. It does not, because I've had
just
it.
doesn't have.
And even Stefano hated it. I remember us trying it one time.
They're like, no, this
No,
is
well,
not
because
from
he gets
Tuscany.
acid reflux with some of the white wines. But yeah, it's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting how depending on the grape, depending on how they, the process, I think it bothers him in different ways. But um, any last thoughts? Well, you're still looking up Legia for me, aren't you?
I was, but I mean, they've got other. Is it
I've looked.
Ligia?
No,
Fine.
Zibibo.
Yeah.
Ah, see, it's $50. Wow.
Oh, it's 13 euros here.
Oh
Probably a
no, it's
different
18. Oh,
year.
it's $19. Yeah, 19.99. Ligia, yeah. No, they still make it. Zabibo, oh, it's an
They're still making.
EGT. That's why I love it. I love EGTs. IGTs, yeah. That blend, or what they
Yeah,
would call
cool.
a super Tuscan or super. That's interesting. Anyway, okay, we should probably end this episode as we were
Probably.
searching.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at least we know that it's
Yeah. I had no idea.
still being made.
Because I could not find it anywhere. At least here, I'm trying to find it here. I don't want to get shipped somewhere at like a horrible, expensive cost.
Oh God, yeah, it's true.
Anyway, but I think this was very informative for all of our wine lovers out there. Would you agree?
I hope so.
I
It
hope
might have
so.
been a bit more of a ramble,
It
but
is
it
a
was
little
an
bit of a
informative
ramble.
ramble.
Well, if they have been listening to me for over a year, they know that I ramble, so it's totally fine. Um, they've accepted me as a rambler, as a going off tangent. But thank you, Giulia, again. So I think, yeah, our next episode of this Italian series probably will be our Mediterranean diet, and I think that'll be my favorite episode because I love talking about food and cheese and pasta and everything that has to do with Italy and Tuscany. So yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and buongiorno, buonasera, buonanotte, wherever you are, and thanks for listening again. Remember that I have a link at the end of our notes here that says speak pipe if you want to leave me a message, leave us a message about this episode or of any questions you guys have. And if you are looking to come to Italy with me this year, I still have openings for my September retreats. Go to trulyitaly.tours and you can find all the information there. Any final thoughts, Giulia?
Well, aside from the wine, if you have any questions about the food in Italy, anything specific or regions that you're looking at visiting, send a question and we will answer it in the next episode.
We will try to. And if we go off on tangents, you will know why. You probably don't know the right answer. It's okay. All right. Ci si vede. Ciao, ciao. I am beyond grateful for you listening to my podcast right now. I am so excited to share my journey of living abroad and all my stories of Florence and Italy and all the places in between that I've visited. If this has reached you in any way and you would like to continue, please subscribe now. Also, go check out my website, trulyitaly.tours, for all my travel experiences. Ci si vede. Ciao.